I think that the Bears finishing the preseason undefeated is something nobody saw coming. Big winners in Cleveland last night. In all seriousness, though, 21-20 victory for the Bears. They finish 3-0. What we saw last night, Kevin Fishbain, I think is justification for why you play the starters in your third preseason game. When you have a team on the rise, in development mode, you needed to see what Justin Fields delivered last night.
Yeah, I think it's so important for them to see Luke Getsy's concepts get going, to see Justin Fields have that success. I mean, if anything, it's just confidence, right? It's just having the ability to see what they did, to watch the tape and say, this is what we've been working on for months. This is what happens when you do it right, you execute it correctly, you're in the right spots. And for Justin Fields to build off that over the next 2 weeks before the 49ers game, I think like you can, like, that doesn't mean they're going to go to the playoffs. It doesn't mean he's going to take a Joe Burrow-esque leap, but it means that they can feel good about what they're doing and have something to build off.
It also gives evidence for a buy-in, and that was the big topic of conversation on Haugh this week was Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, the buy-in. Why would you buy into something? And I think 3 victories in, I know they're just preseason victories, but there is evidence of coaching and a reason to believe.
Yeah, that's what I mean, you can't take much out of preseason because it is the preseason, but I think watching it, it's sort of a ringing indictment of the previous administration. I mean, it's a very professional looking. They're in and out of the huddle quick. There's not a lot of penalties. They look conceptually a lot better than they did, in previous years. And who knows that'll hold? I mean, the Browns didn't play Garrett or Ward or some of those guys, but there is something striking about, even for a preseason game, Fields returning to a site of maybe his worst game his rookie year and looking much better, much more polished, much more ready to go.
I just thought he looked more comfortable, to be honest with you. We saw almost that glimpse of the Ohio State style of Justin Fields, someone who's more comfortable, who's mobile, who has the ability to have time to make the right read down the field. And ultimately, I think that's the type of player you want to see continue into week 1 and then grow throughout this season.
Well, it's better than the last time he was in Cleveland when that was a disaster against the Browns. And that was really bad. But the offensive line, though, Kevin, I still think needs some work, and last night you saw some examples of that. My favorite story of the preseason was Tevin Jenkins, who came in with a lot of questions about his, place in this organization. He's going to be traded, will he be benched, all these things. How did he play, and how far has he come?
I think the first drive wasn't his best, and we saw him get beat. We saw Larry Borum get beat. We saw the Bears go 3 and out. But it looks like he, along with that whole offense, kind of figured things out as they got going. He got more comfortable. It's going to take him some time, but the difference in the way he talked to us this week compared to when he talked to us a couple weeks ago, just a different guy. And I do think the athleticism, the physicality, it could fit him at guard. But I will say, David, we've talked about this. General manager was a former offensive lineman. Assistant general manager, former offensive lineman. You don't think this week they're looking around the league and seeing who's going to get cut, seeing who's available for trade? I don't know if last night's starting 5 is necessarily a starting 5 we'll see against San Francisco. There's just could be a lot of moving parts still at that offensive line.
That's a good point. I think it's also preseason. It's all about Matt Eberflus and how much you believe in everything he has to say. Megan, you're familiar with him from Indianapolis when he was there. You also have spent your entire life listening to a coach. And this is the coachiest of coaches. Mm-hmm. When you hear Matt Eberflus kind of espouse what he believes in, trying to get professional athletes to buy in, what goes through your mind?
Well, I always love the acronyms that coaches throw out. And, of course, you saw Eberflus do that just this training camp session. But to me, Eberflus is a defensive-minded coach. When he got to Indianapolis with Frank Reich, he helped the Colts go from some of the last spots in the league in all the defensive categories to top 10 in many of those categories. You saw a player like Darius Leonard flourish under the help of Matt Eberflus. So I think this is a Bears team that does have the ability to maybe make some noise on that defensive side of the ball. The question is going to be how consistently can you be offensively, and that's something we've spoken to with the offensive line.